Welcome to the Dropping into Power podcast, where we'll be hearing stories about the transformational power of surfing from women surfers of all ages, all levels, and all over. We'll hear about courage, commitment, struggles, frustration, epiphany, and of course, life transformations large and small. I'm your host, Sheila Gallion, and I am stoked to share these conversations full of so much passion with all of you. Aloha. Thank you so much for joining us on the Dropping into Power podcast. I'm very excited about my next guest, and we actually met trauma bonding, which we'll share about a little bit later on. But Lena Siebertz is the founder of Cold Water Sirens, and we'll talk much more about that. But one reason I'm fascinated to talk to Lena is that she lives, now for you Europeans, it's not going to be so exotic, but for a lot of us, imagining surfing in water that goes down to 37 degrees is a little bit humbling. So this is one reason that I was so fascinated by her story. And also just that we've connected. So she actually lived in Berlin for almost 20 years. And she has a whole alter ego. She's very much involved in the art and culture scene, working as a cultural producer and artist and filmmaker, and for a big techno music festival. She returned during the pandemic to her birth town of Hamburg and then rediscovered the North and Baltic Sea, these are, again, just very exotic to me. The North and Baltic Sea is a playground for surfing, especially during the winter. The winter. All right. And she's the founder of Cold Water Sirens, which is an organization that she's created to build feminist community in the surf scene, bringing people together through, for example, organized surf trips and get together. And I just saw a new something that you had posted about. So welcome, Lena.
Hi, really nice to be here. Hi, Sheila.
So nice to finally meet. Lena and I have been trying for a long time to finally make this happen. So between schedules and Wi-Fi and injuries, it's taken a little bit. So let's start with how we met. I had just sliced my head open, and Lena sent me this amazing picture of her all bandaged up herself and said, "Hi, this just happened to me too." So tell us what happened to you.
Yeah, actually, I was reaching out to you because I think we actually had our accident very much at the same weekend, I think.
I think so.
And it was pretty much the same day, maybe even. And I saw it and was like, what? And then I was like, writing you, asking you how you were and how it happened. But also, we got in touch very fast about how to cope.
Okay. So you were saying, just our video got a little glitchy, that we were in touch about how to cope.
Yeah, exactly. Because I was also looking for podcasts or texts where people were writing or talking about how to cope with surf injuries, and most of the things I found was like really not helpful. It was pretty much guys saying, and then I got stitched up and just went in back because the forecast looked good. And because I also saw that you were surfing for a while and probably maybe had also other injuries before and surfing in Hawaii. So I also asked you, hey, how do you have any experience coping with these kinds of accidents? And that's how we got in touch, because I really had injury with also some stitches, and it was also, it was kind of scary. And I was really asking myself how to get back into water. And that's why I was trying to reach out to you, and you replied really fast.
And I do want to talk about that. Just walk us through the details of what happened. And then let's talk about that part of who knows what I said, because I was on painkillers and had 16 staples in my head, but I can go back and read it. But I think you said, go ahead and describe what happened in yours.
Yeah, I mean, it happened in the beginning of the year in January. So I was quite cold, and the waves were really nice. But I already noticed that it was changing a bit, and I know the spot quite well. So I knew if it's going towards low tide that there's going to be a little bit of a weird current going on. But I really wanted to have this famous last wave. And it was also kind of windy. And I kind of fucked up my pop-up, and the board went flying. Fortunately, nobody was around me. And I was covering my head, and I thought that it was already landing next to me. I thought I saw it, but so I took off my arms, but then it crashed on my head. So it was not next to me; it was still flying, and it's quite a big, heavy longboard. So, yeah, and I knew exactly this moment that it was bad.
Did the fin cut you, or did it just a blunt impact?
No, it was actually the nose. The nose of the board.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I thought it was the fin for a second, but later on I checked the board, just thinking like I should check it. Maybe it's also broken. Like I did that a couple of days later.
Oh,
and it was broken. It was actually broken.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but I was super lucky, and I, for some reason, caught the next wave and surfed out with a bleeding head. And a good friend of mine already saw then that something was wrong. And yeah, there were also more friends, and they took me to the hospital right away, and they took really good care very fast. It was really, really nice people in the hospital as well. And yeah, that was really amazing.
And it was right along your forehead. We'll have to post our side-by-side photos when this goes live.
Before and after. Yeah. No, it was 6 stitches, and also 2 of my teeth were broken.
Oh,
but yeah, also, but the bone structure is fine. So I was in generally, I was super, super lucky.
Oof. It's so interesting with mine too. A wave came right after and took us in. And those are gifts. Those are gifts from the sea, because it's a whole other story if somebody has to get us in, So this intense experience, and then just this, like me, similarly, just this experience of being really well taken care of afterwards by the ocean, not to anthropomorphize, but just feeling that support. Thank you. And then, friends and people getting you to the hospital and taking care, and the great care that was, it definitely is a testament to having community in the surf. And, decent people, even if they're strangers, are going to help you. But it is really, I knew all the people that helped me too. Some of them not as well as others. We know each other better now. So it really does, surfing breeds such a competitive atmosphere. It is really, good reminder that the sense of community is so important. So let's talk a little.
At the same time, it's also important to not to go surf by yourself, or not to go to a spot where there's nobody else, right? Like that can happen in winter.
Absolutely. And you can want to. I mean, there's a level at which that is a risk you may want to take.
Yeah, for sure.
Most of us may never really achieve that. I've surfed alone quite a bit. I know I won't be alone for very long, if I get there first, but this accident really made me think about it. Also really made me think about a helmet. A lot of people are wearing helmets now, and I think I'm going to get one because, I had a concussion, nobody talked to me about it, which is really weird, but I had to have, and I still had symptoms afterwards.
Yeah.
And I have some tenderness and numbness, and it's just, I do notice, and we'll talk about the aftermath a little bit, that I do have some hesitation. And the hesitation is not necessarily a good thing in surfing. It can be dangerous. So let's talk about, now I think I could go back and read what I said. I don't actually remember what I said, but I'm pretty sure what I would have said is, and because I know what I did, is to just, really listen to your own body and be, really patient. But what else? I don't know if you remember what else I said. What did we come up with?
Well, I think it was basically, just be patient, but also start slow and low, like small waves, and be good to yourself, actually. But also going back in, right? And I think that was also funny, because we both also went back in the very same weekend.
That's so crazy. I
think that was like maybe 5 weeks, 6 weeks later.
That sounds about right. Yeah, about 5 weeks. Yeah.
And I think my concussion was for about 4 weeks, maybe. I still felt like I had like this hangover kind of situation. And and then when I felt I was gone, then I tried to jump back into the water as fast as possible. And then we actually were in touch again, and it was basically pretty much the same day that we both went in. Yeah.
That was awesome. Yeah, it was really, I know, and not that I would ever wish anyone to have the injury, but it was really fun, comforting to have this partner across the world, going through this same piece. And I have had other injuries, definitely nothing like this one. I mean, this was very next level. And it was very weird that the PA, so here in the US, we have a growing group of people, physician's assistants who sort of step in because of the, sort of as mini doctors, whatever. So when I went to have my staples removed, first of all, this woman was a sadist. I mean, it was only like 7 days in and I had 16 staples in my head, and it's like a staple remover. I mean, they literally go in with like a staple remover and stick it underneath your bleeding, tender staples and just rip them out of your head. And I was like, will you numb me or anything? She's like, oh, that would hurt even worse. And I'm like, I don't know if I can get through this. She's like, well, you're going to have to. So anyways, not a lot of bedside manner. But I asked her, because we have relatively clean water here, but sometimes there's staff like almost anywhere that there's people. Yeah. And so I had asked her, when do you think I can go back in the water? And she's like, oh, you can go in now. Just use soap and water. Okay, no. Just FYI to anyone listening. No, don't go right back out, wait till you're healed. I did not listen to that. So it took, I think for me, about 5 weeks before I felt like the cut was sealed. It is just not a place anybody wants to get an infection. And for me, when I went back out, it was tiny, 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 tiny. And so nobody was out. So it was actually perfect. I could just sort of glide in and there wasn't a soul around, because what I've noticed is I'm not really afraid of the wave. I'm not even really afraid of the takeoff. A little bit. I have a little bit of a hesitation, but I do have a panic around longboarders.
Or we shouldn't go surf together.
Well, yeah. Well, so later, and it depends on the conditions too. Like, and it depends on the longboarder. Let's just say I have a panic about very beginning longboarders, and even though it was such a freak accident, the person that hit me was not a beginner. It was a freak thing, but. Yeah, I do have a little bit of a panic when I see somebody coming down the line,
Sure.
But I'll be over it by the time we meet. Are you having any repercussions, or what's your experience now, a couple months in?
Actually, now I feel very good about it. And I am more cautious, but I guess that's also not bad necessarily. Mm-hmm. I stay away from crowds more than before. Mm-hmm. I did it before too, that I really just checked how everybody's surfing, who's like dropping into other people, who's like able to control the board, who isn't. I always did that. So mm-hmm. I do this now too, maybe a little bit more. I feel with bigger waves, I think I still like them, but maybe also a little bit more cautious. But I'm not afraid of the wave. Actually, I'm just afraid of the boards.
Yeah,
or cautious about the boards, and because I also know exactly what I did wrong, I can also change it. So I take even more care to really, really cover my head for longer than necessary, probably most of the times. What I'm also a bit more cautious about is if the waves are breaking far out, because I do have this now in my head that, that there might be the situation that you should get back to the shore. So I still look, okay, could I actually take the wave up until the shore, or would I need to take 3 waves, or would I need to swim or paddle or whatsoever? That's also a little bit in my head, but
that's interesting.
I'm actually super fine.
Yeah, that's great. Yes.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. But also going back in the first time, I was with friends and they were super supportive. And I was also very relieved because I didn't have any anxiety when I was in. It was also not the smallest day, I must say. But it was okay. But I felt in the first 2 times I was more insecure and nervous, but I didn't have any anxiety, which was great.
That makes sense. Yeah. And I love that you were able to go back through and say, okay, well, this is what happened. I'm not going to do that again. I think I shared with you when we chatted before that my first few months that I was surfing, I went to Costa Rica and went to Witches Rock, and it was tiny, but very, very, very windy. And I fell off my board and I stood up because it was that kind of beach break. And I was looking around for my board and then it landed on my head. So, yeah, I learned about wind that day because it literally had held my board suspended above me long enough for me to literally stand up and look around, like, where is the board?
Yeah.
So, yeah, so we do learn these things, and it is, yeah, day by day. And, things are pointy. I do still think I'm going to get a helmet, but it's very encouraging. Go ahead.
Yeah, a good friend of mine, a good friend who I also surf a lot with, Patricia, she just sent me a message that she had a dream where I was wearing a surf helmet exactly the same beautiful color as my board. And, but I think, I don't know, do you have experience wearing helmets? Like,
no, it's kind of catching on here. And a guy recently, actually a guy that came over and took pictures of my house for an appraisal, was telling me about, his that he got. And he says that you can get them pretty lightweight, because I was concerned, like, does it throw your balance off? Does it hurt your neck? And I guess he had one that had like a visor on it for a while, or a big lip, and that would like literally rip his, like the water would catch and whiplash him. So that sounds bad. So yeah, I don't yet. I do see some people starting to wear them more, and especially here, it's such reef, there's so much rock and reef. So we'll see. I know, I mean, if anyone would be wearing one, you'd think it would be me, but it was really such a freak. It really was a freak thing. But I do think about it, especially with short boards, or I guess with any board, it sort of also protects that, a little bit of your face area, and maybe just as there's more people in the water. Now, you have a lot of padding from your wetsuits. So, okay, let's talk a little bit about where you surf. And I'll have to get my Celsius translator out here. I just thought, it's the coldest water. I think we did this translation before that I had surfed in was 50 degrees, like 48 degrees Fahrenheit, which I think I'll Google it while we're talking. But just tell us a little about where you surf, and we can talk even a little about cold water therapy, because I know this is something part of your whole sort of thing, which is fascinating to me.
I mean, I mostly surf in northern Germany and Denmark, but I also like to go, for example, to Bretagne, to northern France, where it's a little bit warmer. I would say warm. So yeah, in autumn and winter, the waves are best in northern Germany and in Denmark. In Denmark, much better than in northern Germany, but there are also waves here. And in winter, it goes down to 4 degrees, which I think should be around 39 Fahrenheit. And yeah, I just returned from Denmark, and I think it was now 5 degrees. So just a tiny bit warmer, but we are still wearing the thickest wetsuits, which is like 6 millimeters, 6.5 millimeters, and also thick gloves and shoes. And yeah, so you are, in general, you have much more volume, you are much heavier, which leads also to a different surf experience. So you tend to have a bit more volume in the boards too, because you just generally,
that's interesting. And you're more buoyant in a way when you fall off. But yeah, I hadn't thought about with that level of wetsuit. So I think, okay, 8.8 is 48 degrees Fahrenheit, and you go down to 4, did you say?
Yes. Yeah.
So that would be, I just show people in the Fahrenheit. So 37 is 2. I have to go to maybe.
Yeah, actually in the Baltic Sea, it can go down to 2 because it gets colder because there's less salt. So that's maybe the very coldest. Yeah.
So 2 degrees is 37 degrees. That is, I mean, as far like, no matter how you look at it, that's very close to freezing. In any temperature gauge. And then 4.4 degrees is 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So this is This is chilly. And
Yeah, that's chilly.
you have embraced this, though. You've embraced this cold water as part of your health rituals.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really think about it before, but as I said, I moved back to Hamburg during the pandemic, and I think lots of people kind of rediscovered local surfing places then, just because you could not go somewhere else. Yeah, and then we went quite a lot surfing also in the Baltic and the Northern Sea. And I mean, people did that before too, but I think it was just more people doing it.
Yeah.
And also, we all know that this is still a very challenging time. And not only because of the pandemic, there are lots of reasons, but I started to notice that it really, really helped me like coping with everything. Like it was always, I mean, surfing itself, I guess everyone who does it knows it is a very, or can be a very resetting experience. It's can be very meditative. It's a lot of things. It's for many people the happy place and the source of power. But I think this is even enhanced through the cold water experience, just because of the release of all the hormones and transmitters like dopamine, serotonin, adrenaline, endorphins. And I think it's just a bit more. And it really helps with being at mild forms of depression or anxiety. And I mean, that's not news with cold water. I think lots of people have done it over the centuries, and also nowadays, like those dudes like Wim Hof, or I mean, also earlier this other dude, Kneipp, or his name is, like it's not a secret, but I think the combination of cold water and surfing, that's really a really perfect recipe. I mean, not for everyone, for sure, but for me, it's like really pushing the reset button, and and it works.
It's really fascinating. I'm not as familiar. I just recently have sort of come into cold water therapy. I just have such a resistance to being cold. For many, many reasons. And my friend, she has an ice, she has like a freezer that she does as an ice bath. And I can stay in there. I'm really proud for, I would say, 1.5 seconds. It's about as far as I make it. And I know people now doing it for like 10 minutes. When I surfed, it's interesting because when I surfed in Humboldt, when I started, and it was that, again, 47 to 54, which I think is about 8 to 11, 8 to 12 or something. If I really think back at it, that could have been part of it. Was a very resetting experience. And it could have been that cold water added a whole other level. But I think you're talking about getting to your coldness, I think, is where the benefits start to happen. I didn't realize all of those hormones were released. It's really cool. I can really imagine as you start to create this community that people could seek it out as, not just the surf experience, but the reset experience with the cold water. I love that. That's really interesting. So you did not have an easy entry into surfing and started as an adult. Tell the story a little bit of your first experience and, how you, I'm going to back up before that a little bit. So you lived in this very urban world, doing techno. What's the name of the festival that you worked with?
It's called Nation of Gondwana. It's one of the oldest techno festivals, actually. I mean, I think it's going to be 30 years very soon.
Oh, wow.
That it exists, and it's happening close to Berlin. Lots of people know it in Berlin, at least. But nowadays also, it has reached quite an international audience as well. And it's a really beautiful festival. And it's still very much in my heart. And I also will be there this year for sure. But,
when does it take place?
In the end of July.
And so you were living in this world, artistic, music, late night, I would imagine. Did you know any surfers in that environment around you?
No, actually not. I was sometimes like a boyfriend of a friend, or but no, actually that was completely no, I don't recall anyone.
And so what was the
Maybe
first
maybe they
call?
were
Yeah, yeah.
secret surface somewhere.
Right. That you didn't hear about. What was the first, moment that you thought, oh, hey, I'm going to try this? And then I think, is that when you went to a surf camp?
Actually, I mean, I was always very connected to water and the sea. I think it's also because my parents also always had that connection. My father always was sailing. Like he really likes, he said he likes to be on the water or really below, like diving. My mom loves swimming, and we always also spent lots of time at the sea or on the sea, in the sea. And I also always loved waves. Also as a child, I was playing in them. And I also recall seeing surfers, but I think it's a little bit this, you see them, you think like, oh yeah, that looks like fun. But then you think like, yeah, the boys surfing, they are so cool. And it's not yet has not yet really been the time to think like, I should go surf now.
Right.
And I think it's this riot girl moment where you should actually understand that you don't really think the guy is cool. You just think that the thing he's doing is cool and that you would like to do it. But that took me a little bit longer. And it was with 30, like 10 years ago, that I was thinking I still would be interested to try to surf. And then I went to the surf camp in France. That was in southern France. But after a couple of days in the white water, my teacher said that we should paddle out and try to catch the green waves. Actually, I didn't know a thing about surfing, nothing. Like I didn't know that waves come in sets. I didn't know what to do with a wave. Like I was like basically just like, oh, there's white water. Stand up. Like this. For me, it was actually the waves looked big. I would have no idea what I would think about them today. But that day they felt big and strong. And so my teacher said, take that wave. But the wave took me for sure. Like, and there was quite a shore break, quite a strong shore break for sure. It's all beach breaks there. And so the wave smashed me there, which would not have been too bad if I would have known that I should definitely not try to hold my super, super heavy board, which was then those heavy big boards. It was not a soft board then.
Right.
So I did everything to just hold it. And so whenever the next wave hit, it just took over and hit me on every body part that was possible. But also I didn't know that waves come in sets, and I thought I will be just in this situation forever and not will get out of it because I just didn't know.
Oh, God.
And then at some point there were actually people coming from the beach helping me out, and I had like bruises all over my body, and also probably a small concussion because the board also hit me on my head. It was really scary for me. And then after I don't know how many days of resting, the teacher said I should go paddle out again to not get scared of the whole thing. And then paddling out, sitting there, I was just, I totally panicked. I was, I think, blank white. And then the teacher said, well, surfing is not for everyone. And so that really stuck in my head. And we paddled back to the beach because I was just frozen. I could not do anything. And I do remember that I still played a little bit in the white water in the next days, but I was super scared of waves.
And how did you feel? Were you sad? Were you disappointed? Or were you just scared?
I think I was mainly scared. Yeah.
That's pretty harrowing. That's terrible. And I never thought about not knowing that the waves, just in light of that particular experience, like not having any idea that would ever end. Like you think, this is it. This is my life now. I'm just going to be beaten by this board for the rest of my life.
Yeah. And just because of just not knowing how it functions, that's really something that I also have taken from that situation, that the more you know, then the better.
So why you would be such a smart person and reach out. And especially based on that experience, like, how do you handle an injury? How do you take care of yourself? Not the way that that instructor did, who was probably, well, I don't know what she was like, but there's definitely people that it's more that guy way of just throw you back out there instead of giving you more information and sitting with you and making you feel safe and all the other things that, she might've done in that situation that you later did for yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's pretty brutal. What led you back to the water after such an experience?
The thing is, I still loved it, and I mean, it was difficult to overcome that, or I don't know if I think there's still a tiny bit left of that experience in myself. But it took me just many years and trying again and again and again and again and again, and also finding on the way other instructors which were much more helpful, and just gaining much more knowledge about everything and understanding.
Mm-hmm. So what was that like for you, as kind of cultivating, because you were living in Berlin at the time, and then so what did it take for you to start to spend more time in the water?
I mean, actually, to be honest, the following years, I was one of those surfers who would go surfing maybe once a year, twice a year, 1 week, 2 weeks, like really not surfing, just starting all over again and again and again.
Yeah.
And just feeling like, I still like it. I would like to continue it, but not really making the space in your life. So I would say it was like a very long distance love affair with surfing, which was very new again and again.
But what I love, which I think is incredible, is that you kept your enthusiasm and passion about it. You didn't go and try, and maybe you had moments, but you weren't like, oh, I'm never going to get this. You were just like, I love this, and I'm going to find a way to make space in my life for this. What was the shift when you finally said, okay, it's got to be more than once a year?
I think it was like really maybe now like 3.5, 4 years ago, that I also felt like Berlin was not so much the place that I really wanted to be my center of life. I mean, still, like, lots of my friends are there who I love and also who I miss. But the place itself was not really what I wanted anymore. And so I started to make more space for surfing and being with a van, being at the sea, being in the nature, and also trying to work more remote from there. And then I think, but it really changed when I moved back to Hamburg, and really having the opportunity to go within an hour to a sea where there are waves, where to surf. And that was really the game changer.
So how far, just for perspective, when you lived in Berlin, how long would it take you to get to surf?
I mean, it is possible, as I said, to surf in the Baltic Sea, but that would be still 3 hours, and that would be going 3 hours for interesting waves. So most people from Berlin would go further. They would go to France, and that would be by car probably maybe 15, 16 hours, 17 hours to reach the coast.
Okay.
So I would say, I would say most people in Berlin who are surfing, they usually fly to places to surf, or they go for a really long vacation with their van, or longer, at least like a longer one. So it's worth going. Yeah,
that's amazing. And then, flying with boards, that's its own whole deal and expense. So, okay, I didn't realize it was, I am geographically challenged, although I have driven through Germany. I wouldn't have known it was that far. But I can picture it now. So you have this van. And so how many people have these vans? You said people get their van and they...
Plenty. It's a lot of people who have vans.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, so it becomes more and more. It's, It's awesome.
So now what kind of a van is it? Is it a Volkswagen or what are they?
It actually is. It's an old Volkswagen T4. No, it's 10 years younger than I am.
Okay. Okay. And so they're all out, and then it's all outfitted for you to camp. And
Yeah, exactly.
I love this vision of all these Europeans buzzing around in surf vans.
Yeah,
I
I mean, but it's also, especially now in the pandemic, everybody wanted to have one. I mean, before it was already like hashtag van life stuff.
right. That's true.
Very
Right.
Instagram. And now it even became more through COVID that people were like, okay, this is actually a safe way to travel. You're not, like, you're for yourself. You can stay distant. And it's lots of places are now very crowded because lots of people understood that this is a really nice way to move around. So there's also, yeah, places are also changing. Locals are getting more pissed about it, which is also understandable. Also, not everybody is really like taking so much care about keeping the places clean. And yeah, but still.
That's interesting. I see. Yeah. So it's sort of like a whole little economy has formed, but instead of there being little boutique hotels and whatever, they're more places that were more localized or remote. And then suddenly people can, descend upon them probably for pretty good lengths of time too, week or 2 weeks. And oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. No, it's
Beautiful.
a huge
Go ahead.
economy around it. It's a huge economy around it, actually.
Are there like food trucks? Okay, so describe the
No,
scene.
it's more like the whole like buying vans, converting them,
Oh, I
buying
see.
gadgets for them, all kinds of things. And also just the vans themselves, they got so expensive because there's such this big demand. Yeah.
Are they mostly Volkswagens?
No.
No, okay. All right.
I think Volkswagen is just a very famous one. But no,
Yeah.
there are all kinds of other brands that I could name now, but I don't.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I guess I've seen the Instagram van life thing. I just hadn't really translated it all to. Years ago, I had a Volkswagen bus that I shared with my friends. 4 of us owned it together, and it was a VW. It had the pop-up tent and camper. It was, if only I had surfed back then, I could have had a lot of fun. But yeah, they are, they're amazing. And it's like everything, it gets sort of commercialized and then, doesn't seem as cool in a lot of ways. But I hadn't realized, because I don't see it here on the island. I'm sure if I was on the mainland, I would see a lot more of it. But here you can't. It doesn't really exist on the island, and it'd be difficult to find parking places and things like that. A little bit. I think there's actually people that rent out like their Airbnb vans. So I think there was a little bit of that. Too. Well, the last question I had sort of about this transition period is, did people think you were crazy, like just zipping off to freezing cold water and living this alter ego of surf life? Did you have to find like a whole new group of friends?
Well, I mean, I do still have my old friends and I love them, even though they don't surf. And I also know that they part of like some really, I mean, actually some of them are surfing now too. Or they tried it out. Others might not really understand it, but be still supportive. I don't know to what extent they think that I'm crazy. I don't think, I think.
Well, your friends probably don't. Yeah. I just
no, but people. I think there's just, I mean, generally, like if you go somewhere and go into the cold, like usually people ask, isn't that cold?
Right. I guess that's, yeah.
Yeah.
It's that question.
It's cold. and you get photographed maybe a lot by tourists. So I guess that's also an expression of thinking that you're at least a little bit crazy. Right. But I think also, I mean, also within the people going cold water surfing, I think we are all a little bit, I mean, you have to take it with a lot of humor. And that's, I think there's no way around it because it is a little bit crazy. I mean, so
how long can you stay out with all of your equipment? Like how long can you stay out?
It really depends how well your equipment fits and also on how fit you are and how you deal with cold. I usually can stay out for like 2 hours.
Okay.
And also you need to be very cautious. Like if you notice that you're getting cold, you should definitely go out because that's more dangerous than when it's warmer. because
Interesting.
it's
That's a whole other peril. And you can get, I suppose you could get that sense of warmth that comes from hypothermia if you're not careful.
Yeah, exactly. You need to be careful. Yeah.
I would get, and again, I didn't surf. I only surfed in like a 4-3 wetsuit and I had thick booties, but back then it was different. That was like 2001. Plus I was poor. So, I think the 4-3 was a little bit cheaper than the 5-4. So I got that one. But I just remember my feet would get completely numb. And then and then you have to be careful walking out of the water so you don't like break your ankle. There's a whole other level. And then I finally got 7 mil booties. And then that kept my feet warm enough that I didn't feel in danger, but it would be, and then I had a hood and everything and gloves, the whole deal. It's weird, normally I balk at the thought of it, but you make it sound so good. Sounds very refreshing.
It is very refreshing.
Very resetting, as you say. So how did cold water, you mentioned it took you a while to find your tribe. And so I think this was part of it. How did Cold Water Sirens, which is, by the way, just such a great name. I love it so much. How did that originate and what's the dream?
I mean, I think that was also one thing that held me back for a while was that I always went to the spots by myself, then waiting for a long time. Should I go in? Should I not go in? Not really having surfing friends. And so I still went sometimes to surf camps, just not to go by myself. And then in one surf camp, actually in Andalusia, I finally met my first surf buddy, Patricia. And she was also in the camp. And she was also a little bit like, we were both not like super happy in the camp. We felt a little bit alien. And then we started to get to know each other. And after that camp, we were both like, hey, that's going to be our last surf camp. From now on, we just go and surf together. And that we did. And this is now, 4.5 years. I don't know. I'm not so good with time.
Oh, that's great.
And then we started to travel together with the vans, and then we slowly grew more. and now I think we are like, it's a whole lot of bigger group. Not everybody knows each other, but everybody gets to know each other. It's different constellations. And it's a whole different game. Like for me, it's like, this is for me a dream that came true to have this surf girl gang going out together. And how
many people are typically out at your normal? No, so what's your main break?
Okay, that's maybe a little bit like I was now talking about it more in general.
Okay.
But my main break, it's really hard to say. I don't have one, actually, because I don't live next to one spot.
Where do you, because you post a lot of photos from this one that kind of has bluffs. Is that Klitmuller? Is that?
That's in the area of Klitmuller.
Yeah, which is just a hilarious name.
We love the name.
Yeah. Klitmuller. Yeah, we'll have to spell it out. So let's just take that break for, an example. What is it like? Is it sandy beach break, point break, or, do you walk out, paddle out? Just what are the conditions like there? Because people can go to your Instagram, which I'll post in the notes, and see those photos and just kind of imagine what it's like. Is that the place that you call Cold Hawaii? Sorry.
Exactly. Okay. Cold Hawaii is it's a couple of spots. It's a region in the north of Denmark, and it's not so far from Hamburg. So also lots of people from northern Germany, especially from Hamburg, are driving up there when the forecast is good. It's like 5 hours drive.
Okay.
And the region up there kind of goes, it's a stretch, about 30, 40 kilometers.
Oh, wow.
In North Zealand. And there are different spots. And you have beach breaks. You have also sand-covered reef. They're very, very different, actually. Also, the level that you should have surfing them. Also, some are more for shortboard, others more for longboard. You have a huge range, actually. And
okay, I'm trying to imagine surfing a shortboard in that weather, duck diving, and that's okay. That's a reset. Duck diving, the ice cream headache. So the spot that you
It's
post a lot of pictures, kind of where you're out on that bluff, um, is that a beach break there? That's what it looks like.
yeah, that's a beach break.
And
I
that's kind
mean,
of a longer
there's
wave.
there are rocks, like rocky. It's a rocky ground. It's not beachy beach,
Oh, okay.
but yeah, and that's a longer wave. Can be a really nice longboard wave, but yeah, in this area, I don't know exactly what you're referring to when you're talking about it, but I guess I have an idea. No, you really find various breaks, and also in the conditions, like, you know, if it's smaller, it can be a really mellow wave, but then then there's like more swell coming in, which can happen because you have like this window in the northwest where actually the swell is arriving. So it's not like, for example, in the Baltic Sea, you get only wind swell, or so in northern Germany, in the North Sea, what you get is usually wind swell with maybe like just a little pinch of ground swell. Yeah, and especially in I think there was also now on Magic Seaweed, they covered quite a lot about, there was like this article about cold Hawaii, and there were these barrels and one of the spots.
Oh, you showed me
But
that. Yeah, you sent that to me. That was incredible.
yeah, so this can happen too.
So
Sometimes.
typically, what's the size of wave that you're surfing? Well, I guess you surf so many different places, but
Yeah,
yeah, it's
but I think my like 1.5 meters is what I like comfort zone.
I think that's like 5 feet. So okay. So like almost head high,
Yeah,
right around
my
head high.
my,
Okay.
my
Depending on how tall you are, right?
yes, I'm not so tall.
So what is your goal with going forward? I know that you are looking at doing some different kinds of gatherings and offerings with Cold Water Sirens. So
Yeah.
what's on the horizon?
What we are organizing is like feminist surf trips. So everybody who can identify with that idea is very much invited. And what we are planning now is actually 2 trips and combine surfing with systemic coaching. We already did this now in the beginning of the year in Denmark, and to start the new year actually in really cold waters. So also for people to try out cold water surfing and to be supported in that, but also to try to really combine it with this approach of systemic coaching and to try out what happens if you combine this experience.
What
And
is
I do this.
systemic coaching?
Now I would need my friend and colleague Anna to really explain it because she's the systemic coach. It is a form of trying to see what are the questions that you have in your life right now. It can be like you can have like, I don't know, maybe it's about where you are right now in your life, where you want like to go. Maybe you're in some point of a crisis. Maybe it's just about your job. Can be also questions leading or about your surfing, like really maybe something where you're a little bit stuck, where you could need a little bit help, somebody who asks the right questions. And it's not therapy in that sense. Like it's not a psychologist or a therapist asking the question, but a systemic coach is like really trying to use tools or has different tools to work with you to figure these questions out.
Oh, I love that. That's
and
so
we
cool.
thought this is really good to combine with surfing because this really has the energy to shake things up, and suddenly you maybe question certain things in your life. So to combine this with this systemic coaching approach could make sense. And and she's actually also doing it from her van. It's called she's called Van Life Coaching. So she does that already sometimes remote. And we actually got to know each other because we have exactly the same van.
Oh,
that's actually how we met once in Bretagne in France. And we started this now together to combine it. And we are super looking forward to do this again in June, to have like a second try in the summer. with a lot of light and warmer. Like for you, it would be still cold waves, but for us, it's really warm waves.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the other trip that we would like to organize is actually to combine it with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is
okay.
which is a very different approach.
Wow.
Which,
I love stepping out of the yoga thing, because although that has been amazing, like that's an amazing option, this is a whole new whole approach on this. Fascinating.
Actually, there's also always the possibility to do some yoga on top. But I also think it's really interesting to find other combinations. And I think yoga still makes a lot of sense just because
totally.
How it stretches your body and everything. And
it's so complementary and calms the mind.
Exactly.
Very complementary. But yeah, it is interesting because I haven't seen anything else really combined with it. So these are both just incredibly fascinating. And I think, especially with the systemic coaching, so much comes up when you're trying to learn to serve. I mean, it brings up everything about your life. So it's really a fascinating, you can have a bad session and come in and be like, I need questions answered about, not just why can't I pop up, but why can I move forward, in my career, whatever.
And also questions about do you really lead the life that you want to lead right now? And I think that totally makes sense. But I'm also super excited about the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because I was not really my idea. I was back in Berlin and I went to a party and I met an old friend of mine, and she also is working or used to work as a bouncer in the clubs in Berlin. And she was like, hey, I heard you organize these surf travels now. Maybe we can do something together. And then we came up with the idea. So
it's just so badass. Yeah. It's like, it's just a bad bitch surf trip, you're gonna surf cold water waves, you're gonna do jiu-jitsu. At least that's the way it's sounding to me. I mean, I'm sure there's much more to it, but it's so cool.
I'm super excited about it. But the main idea is still to come together and to support each other and to have lots of fun, actually, and to share these moments and also really encourage, especially women, non-binary. And it's I think a lot of people are still very much left out of surf culture and don't feel comfortable. Also with for sure, there's much more women surfing now there, but also the representation is so bad still. And I think there's still so many blind spots that should be addressed. And also age-wise, I think the people that are joining our trips, it's probably 35 plus, going up way higher, and we really encourage that.
It's such an empowering thing. And I think, learning as an adult and as an older woman, it is a deeply emotional and spiritual experience. And especially the higher up you go in age, because it's just such a very difficult thing to do. And, hats off my friend Jeannie, who started at 67. I have friends starting at 55, 57.
Yeah.
In their 40s. Cool. And there are different experiences you're going to have, even in your 30s, if you're a fit yogi, starting in your 30s versus somebody, starting in their 50s or 60s, it's a different experience. So it's
for sure,
but it gives us this texture in the water. And I know, one thing I talk about with a friend here in Kona, who is kind of, still in the beginner realms, and she's in her 50s. She really struggles with feeling not supported by women here, because I think we have kind of a scarcity of waves. And so, and there's a scarcity of places that we can surf, if you're trying to learn to surf here. It's just very hard place to learn. It's very reefy, rocky. So it interestingly breeds a very competitive culture with women, not a supportive one. And that's been her experience. I don't experience it completely like that, but I've been surfing a long time. So, getting women in the mindset, and what she was saying, which was interesting, is, the men are generally nicer. There's the ones that just burn you and are obnoxious and rude. So I think it's important to have these conversations to remind us to not go into, if that's an old biological default, of scarcity, that we compete with each other, to remind us to be there for each other, and I think when the waves are more bountiful, it's a more natural reaction. And we're always going to feel a little competitive because you're scratching for waves. I mean, and it's hard to get better. And, there's a little bit of that in there. But I love the whole dialogue you're having and community and everything that you're creating to just acknowledge all these places and, how badly we need it and how badly we need each other. Yeah.
Also, I think just the feminist approach is really to start a different kind of culture in the lineup.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it doesn't really much matter if this is a man or woman, cis men. For me, it's super important to as a feminist approach to find a different culture in the lineup, which is super supportive and also just really celebrating each other's waves and
Mm-hmm.
also laughing a lot and
Mm-hmm.
really also not to take this whole thing too serious in the end. And I mean, I know it's hard because I mean, you really want to get better also in surfing, and
Mm-hmm.
it is a very difficult sport, but at the same time really never forget about how important it is to just be kind to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And and I think it's easy to forget sometimes, and also if it's a crowded spot, it's still possible. And maybe sometimes it just means they have to wait a little, but then you maybe have a nice chat with someone next to you. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, I think there are so many possibilities to not have it too competitive. And
Yes, it's so true.
And then, to just share some waves. And that's really one of the aims that I would have for that.
It's really powerful. And it's important that it's happening all over. It's important that it's in the conversation because it's not natural. It is not natural to lift others, really. I mean, in some situations it is, but in situations where you all want the same thing, it's like learning how to share in kindergarten, like, or share the cookies. Like it doesn't always come naturally. Sometimes it does. For me, if I've just caught a fantastic wave, man, I am full of love. Everybody get a wave. If I've been sitting there for half an hour and everybody's surfing but me, I'm not so benevolent, so it's training ourselves. It's training ourselves to have a better life for all of us.
Yeah.
So I know it is late there. I'm not going to walk you through all these questions. I have two more questions I want to ask you because I want to know, first of all, what is your best day surfing that you can remember?
Oof. I'm super lucky because there have been so many. And I can't really make out one, but I'm 100% sure that somehow there's a sunrise or sunset or lots of rainbows or something like that involved. And it's probably somewhere in a northern place where lots of different colors are in the sky. And I'm 100% sure that it's with some super great people together on the water and just really, really cheering for each other. That's, I think, like
that makes my heart all warm.
Always the best cheerleaders for each other. And and I'm actually, I cannot make out this one best surf day.
No, that's a beautiful portrait. I love that. And then the last question, and although you've really given a lot of this already, just based on everything you're focusing on, but what is one thing that you would like to share from your journey? One thing that you would like women surfers to know?
I think like really look actively for your crew. Like that's, I think, something that I maybe started a little bit late that could have helped me a lot earlier. And I think that that nowadays it's really much easier. I mean, in social media, there are all these groups. For example, one very good surfing friend of mine, like she was writing a couple of years back in Bretagne in one of those groups, "Hey, I'm here in Bretagne. I don't want to surf alone anymore. Is there someone?" I was writing her like, "Hey, I'm here. Just come over." And she was like, "Okay, I'm there in half an hour." And then we spent the next 2 weeks together surfing. And we're still surfing together, also at Cold Water Sirens. And so I think like really, for sure, don't give up and look actively for your crew.
I love
and
that.
be a cheerleader for yourself and to others.